Who's your I really hate this guy? My best friend moved to a different state, met a guy, and quickly got engaged. She brought him to meet us, and he told me how much he made within the first 10 minutes. Asked what I made, scoffed at the amount, said he would never live in my apt because we didn't have an elevator. Said he would never be caught dead driving in a car like mine. Also said he buys new cars every 2 years. Talked over my friend constantly. I would ask her a question and he would answer for her. He complained about the amount of money she made and made fun of her job. She's a social worker who works with underage girls that have eating disorders. He styles his mustache to do that pretentious curl thing with wax. Screw that guy. Worked as a receptionist at an eye doctor glasses store for a bit. There was this one dude who I kept needing to call, confirm exam appointment, question about order. His glasses are ready. His glasses were ready a week ago, and he still hasn't picked them up. etc. This dude never answered his phone, and his voicemail message was 2 minutes of him acting like he couldn't hear you. Hello, I can't hear you etc. And then him saying just text me, and then you hear the beep for the voicemail machine to start recording. First time I fell for it, because he did a genuinely convincing job. Every other time I had to sit through this long thing to be able to actually leave a message. Bet this idiot thought he was so clever and didn't even consider that someone other than his friends would call. No, I can't just text you from the Vision Center's landline. Hope this guy gets a clue before he applies to jobs with this or something. My brother's uncle, I refuse to claim him, has an alcoholic and a drug addict that put my grandparents through hell. Some of the gems he said to his mother's face. Why don't you just give me my inheritance now? Why would I want to ruin my Christmas Eve by spending it with you? Then once she died, it was oh boo-hoo. Swore he would put family first. He then proceeded to treat my grandfather like crap, and because grandpa lived with me, I saw it firsthand. He would say he was coming over on Sunday, so grandpa would be up at the crack of dawn ready to go, and would be sitting watching out the window like a kid who has divorced parents and is waiting for his dad to show up for his weekend. He would sit there all day and then be heartbroken when the guy didn't show up and never called. Listening to my grandfather cry because he was so upset made me see red. Then once grandpa died, it was all boohoo for me all over again. Since both of my grandparents were now gone, I ripped into him and told him exactly what I thought of him. That was 13 years ago, and it still wasn't enough for me. Recently he told his probation officer that he lived with me and gave his PO my address. The PO then comes to me looking for him. That was a fun conversation. He's a pathetic, worthless waste of oxygen, and I hope he dies cold, alone, and painfully slowly. These are just a couple examples, but don't even scratch the surface of what a piece of crap he is. So I have played in bands in many areas and on many different stages. This covers more of a type of guy. It's the dude who is in a local band that are popular and now think that because they buy views on YouTube that they are the next big thing and will bring the scene back, and look down on every other band, but their band are actually not as good as they think they are. The kind that has more merch than songs and the music is just a bit meh. All bands are doing the same thing. Support and lift up the local bands. Network and celebrate when they do well. It isn't that hard to just not be a complete egotistical dick. That guy. My ex-best friend and former crush. He was actually my dad's friend first, even though the guy was like 20 years younger than my dad and only 3 years older than me. When I first met him, I thought he was a cool dude and we had a lot in common. The thing is though, he loved to drink, like a lot. I saw him polish off 2/3 of a case of beer on several occasions. Meanwhile I hardly ever drink, and if I do, it's only one drink. But that aside, I still managed to develop a crush on him. He was an attractive guy at the time. After knowing him for a year, I decided to shoot my shot and confess to him. I had never done so before and haven't since. At first he completely friend-zoned me, but then he would flip-flop and act like he was interested. He constantly held it over my head that I asked him out and would sometimes act like he was interested, and like a naive, lovesick idiot I'll let him do it. I know I should have told him off, but I never did. So this went on for about 6 months until one fateful night, when he did something so cruel and unforgivable. To make an already long story short, he intentionally took a lit piece of paper and burned my then 8-year-old brother in 3 places. He'd been alone with my brother several times before and nothing ever happened. I never saw him again after that night. My parents rightfully pressed charges, and he was charged with child abuse. Last I heard he got 8 months in jail and like 2 or 3 years probation. Since it was his first offense, every time I think about him all I feel is anger and regret and sorrow over what my poor brother went through. So yeah, F that guy. 2 guys I used to work with. First guy was a 50-year-old redneck. He'd make racist jokes and call people gay. He once insinuated that me and another coworker are gay because we talked a lot. We were friends and I knew him from working together at a previous company. We go back a few years. I don't take offense to much, but he was just obnoxious. I jokingly made an ours complaint form and put it on his desk. After he made an anti-Semitic joke, he took offense to it and called me a piece of sh. He also used to play music loudly, country, in a small open office and turn it up when I was on the phone. He would have been okay if he left to do whatever he wants, but I found it incredibly difficult to concentrate with Alan Jackson's Remember When playing on repeat. I loathe that song. The other guy was a year younger than me, mid-30s, but he acted 15. He's Pakistani, so I know there's a culture difference there. He was very I'm a macho alpha dog kind of guy. Always would talk about going to the gym. Dude was scrawny, and how his wife made all his food, because he's a real man. I'm pretty sure it was an arranged marriage. He used a slur for Pakistani people and I asked him about it. Since a Pakistani friend told me it was a slur, the response was, yeah. My sister tells me not to say it either, but I use it because I think people should stop being offended by everything. So this guy purposefully uses offensive language because he prides himself on not being offended by things. Again, I don't get offended by much, but that seems like a shy attitude to have. This guy would also play his music loudly, often at the same time as the other guy. They sat right next to each other. His music was usually EDM, but he'd throw in little kid pop like Jojo Siwa. He also really liked an EDM remix of the Baby Einstein theme, WTF. He also used to give me parenting advice from the 1950s despite him not having kids. He'd also tell me he thought it was horrible that I let my wife work. Other coworkers would always comment how they always forget we are around the same age because he acts like a kid. At the company holiday party, his wife spent the night telling my wife how she should be home with our kids during the day. The next year, she spent the whole party complaining to my wife that raising their new kid was so hard. The job was fine, but I absolutely hated working next to those 2 guys. And the company was only 12 people. I never got a raise there because my boss would always complain I was too expensive and needed to do more work. He even threatened to cut my salary, but he'd never give me more work to do. I took this as we don't want to pay you this much, and we are looking for justification to pay you less. That was the nail in the coffin, and I left. I told the owners that I couldn't take working with those guys anymore. The older guy was best friends with one of the owners, so I knew it was land on dead ears. I was told, "Come on, you know this is kind of a boys club. I can take joking around and a casual atmosphere, but I also want to feel like a professional company and I don't want to work with shitty music every day." One of my old bosses got drunk at an office party and admitted to a group of us that he made the employment contract deliberately vague so he could copy/paste them for each new employee and just change the name to say time. His justification was that the contract was just a legal box to tick because he could make us do whatever he wanted. Yes, this meant that everyone was paid the same, no matter what their role was. Because of the toxic office politics that he helped cultivate, this pissed a lot of people off, including me. I already hated him, but after that I really effing hated him. It's been like 10 years at this point, but I still have a grudge against one particular teacher I had in college who systematically took my grade down nearly 10% after I turned in a final, causing me to miss a full letter grade by a single point and forcing me to lose my scholarship. Dude was teaching his first semester at the school when I had him and was pretty clearly irritated about having to teach this particular class as he was hired as a specialist for another field. I wouldn't say that I ever had any particular beef with the guy, but I always got the vibe he didn't like me, and he was certainly not my cup of tea either. I had somewhere in the neighborhood of an 87% in this freshman level class, so I was really hoping that if I did well enough on my final project, that I could climb up to an A. I turned everything in and waited anxiously to check my grade after a week or so. Not only did I not get an A, but I was blindsided with a C. I was utterly shocked and confused, but then the actual reality of my situation set in. My overall GPA had fallen down just below what I needed to maintain my main scholarship. I was furious, but mainly just perplexed at how I could have done so well, and then lost 10% of my grade right at the end. I politely emailed my professor asking to see a breakdown of my grades as I had never even seen what I received on my final, my course long journal, etc., or gotten any feedback. No reply. Emailed again. No reply. Every time I saw him in the halls after that, he would make eye contact and then change direction or go into an office. I thought, okay, this is fishy because he's clearly avoiding me. I had to request my grades through the department chair, and when I got them, I saw I had a 79.98%. If I had gotten one more point on anything all semester, I would have gotten a B. I finally saw all of my grades. The teacher gave me a 60% on my final, 40% on participation, 50% on my semester-long journal, and 70% on my attendance. I only missed a single class all semester, which was the day after my 21st birthday. No feedback or explanation, just straight slaughtering of my grades. I tried to appeal it, but of course it's difficult to prove objectively, without a shadow of a doubt, that your teacher went through and deliberately, systematically sabotaged your grade, so that you would fall just low enough to receive the grade he thought you deserved, especially when it's an art course, and there are no objectively right answers. It was basically the teacher's word against mine, so I lost that appeal again, never hearing any feedback or explanation for why I was so heavily slammed. There were apparently even a handful of non-art majors in the class who got A's and B's. The teacher, department and dean wouldn't even afford me a single point in order to keep my scholarship, yet I got a 4.0 the next semester, regained an equivalent scholarship later on, ended up graduating with honors, getting a recommendation from the department chair, and have had a high-paying job in my field ever since. 10 years. So I feel like that backs up my claim that I wasn't lazy or inadequate or any of the other reasons I could have tanked my grade, and that this really was just a hit job by a mean teacher. I mean, what kind of person wouldn't just afford a student 1 point when all of the power is in their hands and the grading metrics are all highly subjective? You have to be pretty heartless to say, wow, he almost had an A before this, and now he's 1 point away from getting a B. That sucks. I was a 21-year-old broke college student. These things have huge consequences. Him trying to stick it to me like that could have caused me to no longer attend the school. Obviously, I paid off my loans forever ago, but every time I wish I had more money for something, I can't help but to feel better about the extra thousands and thousands of dollars I paid for school that I shouldn't have.